My name is Gerard Swain from the University of Maastricht. My question is about the incidence of the diseases. Several disease incidents have been mentioned: cryptorchidism, hypospadia, testicular cancer, and so on. Now, I've looked at these data, and it came to I got the impression that there are two main factors that are very important in the incidence. And these are, first of all, it's a reported incidence. So over time, our diagnostic criteria, our diagnostic tools, our reporting, our registration issues, they have improved. So what I postulate here is part of the incidence increase in these diseases is artifactual. It's because we have better registrations, better diagnostics, better detection, screening programs, and so on. The other group of risk factors that I believe is very important, over time, the last 50 years, our reproductive habits have dramatically changed. Women get their children at much later age as it used to be. We use cesarean section, we have IVF, and we have very small families. Just as an illustration, two observations that have pretty good evidence. Testicular cancer, the risk for testicular cancer in first-born boys is about 40% higher than in fourth-born boys. Now today we don't have any fourth-born boys anymore because all the families are two. So the prevalence of first-born boys has increased by this. So it's not so surprising that testicular cancer has also gone up. Another example is cesarean section. Children born out of cesarean section, they have about the 40% increase in risk of becoming obese in later life. So it's not so surprising that these diseases go up because we have changed our reproductive lifestyle. So I wonder, and that's the question, are you really confident that you have taken up these other risk factors and have adjusted for them? Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to answer to that. Of course, one has to take into account all possible risk factors and really do also to look at the confounding effects in the studies. But I tried to explain for the testis cancer, for example, that there's no way one can explain this by reporting or register changes, because the men are dying of the disease if they are not diagnosed. And the registries, they have been studied very well, at least in the Nordic countries, to find that they are 99% correct for this, and they are cured by the treatment. So there would be a big optimistic leap of faith if we thought that testis cancer was as common as it's now 40 years ago, and it just wasn't registered. So, and for the cryptorchidism, there are good criteria for that Scorer in the 1960s published. And if one follows those criteria, one can see that in the countries where there are consecutive studies, like in UK, there's studies from the 1950s, 1980s, and 2000s. The incidence has gone up from 2.5 to 5 to 7%. And so, of course, there's possibilities that something is wrong there, but one shouldn't sort of rely on the possibility of error. One should rather lean on that the findings are true. The firstborn boys have higher risk of testis cancer, but one should also ask, why is that? And there we know that the firstborn boy also has the highest download of all the toxicants that the mother carries. And each breastfeeding is downloading, the mothers are safe from many POPs, for example. The dioxin level in the mother goes down with every breastfeeding, and many other toxicants that are lipophilic. So that could be one explanation why the mothers who have many children have lower risk for many cancers. Their own load is going down, and the firstborn has the highest load that is downloaded from the mother. Well, this is just the one thing. Also the other thing is that the fertility and testis cancer risk go hand in hand. The low fertility and testis cancer risk come together, and there is also the susceptibility, the genetic component is there, that's for sure. But there are different populations have different risk also. It's not only environment. We have to keep eyes open for all possibilities and not close eyes for anything.
Okay, I think we have room for one more question.
Okay. Thank you. Physicians. Well, I'm a reproductive toxicologist, so I'm close to topiary field. But if I ask to my fellow physicians, they tell me that the main endocrine disease in Europe, the main individual endocrine disease is diabetes. But to my best knowledge, there is a considerable lack of knowledge about mechanism by which chemicals, what chemicals may induce or not diabetes. There is a considerable lack of testing methods to catch findings related to diabetes and metabolic syndrome, and there is also a lack of epidemiological knowledge about the link of chemicals and diabetes. First of all, am I wrong? And second, would you like to comment about this? Because to me, that would be a considerable, if proven, a link between chemicals exposure and metabolic syndrome and diabetes, that would be a considerable public health cost.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is very important question, and of course the type 2 diabetes is the big one, the big killer, and there we have some epidemiological studies, even some chemical studies. For type 1 diabetes, there is almost nothing, and we think of that as an autoimmune disease, but just for the last few years the paradigm there also has switched a little bit, that the autoimmunity seems to be the epiphenom, and there's the beta cell damage that is there, the sort of maybe the first triggering event. The problem with diabetes is that we don't know the cause for the disease, and enormous sums of money have been put to find out it. It has a strong genetic component, but it's clear, again, looking at the disease incidences, like now Finland, there is on top of the incidence is 65 per 100,000, and it's very prevalent in Finnish children. But why? There are now big cohort studies looking for environmental determinants of diabetes, but what are the environmental determinants studied in those cohort studies? They are viruses, bacteria, diet, but there's nothing about the chemical exposure as yet, to my knowledge.
Thank you. I just want to comment on this question as well. This is a very serious and important question, of course. But as I showed in my presentation, you also see the enormous complexity on what is out there. So I regard it as more or less impossible to actually find causality, because the mixture is so complex. We may have intelligent experimental work to be done in the future, So you can build up a mode of action type of information. So that's where we stand. But you are right. I mean, wherever I go, I see these enormously increasing trends. I see it in China, Bangladesh, and you can name the countries. They are all over.
And I can just add to that this expert panel, they have also published a paper on obesity and metabolism, which I'm sure you're aware of. But I have it with me, but I don't have the details in my head. From the figure here, they say that obesity and diabetes renders a cost of 15 billion euros per year in the European Union.